it's time for Measure Twice.
Welcome to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk, 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger right next to C. Kramer Interiors. And Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com, and you should. We always say that. Make it a point. Matter of fact, you can, I don't know, do they have a tap floor there? Can you bring your tap shoes down or maybe do a little soft shoe?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Yeah, there's space for that.
Yeah, we could go and I want to set up a soft shoe floor. Can you do that?
Put a little sand down.
Throw a little sand.
Nice.
Just what you want on a hardwood floor.
That's what you want. You want to grind that out there. My goodness. Can you imagine that back in the day? They were doing, that was a thing, right? They would throw sand on the floor and like.
Chris would know better than me.
Yeah. I'm looking at,
I don't know.
I thought you would just say 23 Skidoo. You just go, 23 Skidoo. This soft shoe's swell. It's against pajamas.
No
I
comment.
have no idea.
He's like,
I'm winding my watch. Leave me alone.
He is winding his watch. How much winding does that watch need?
It's catching up to date.
Oh, boy.
I put this on last time in 1986.
Pretty much.
You're gonna need
Feels
to go
that way.
to wind that watch. You're gonna have to go 88 miles an hour in a DeLorean.
Yeah.
I made him chuckle.
Yep.
So, well, today, you know, we haven't talked about this in a long time, but I had somebody ask me a bunch of questions, thinking I'm the one that knows what they're talking about in here, and I'm not. That's where you guys come in. But he was basically asking me how to measure countertops, and it got me to thinking we haven't talked about the logistics of measuring spaces in a long time. And I think that's pretty key to when you're trying to figure stuff out.
To do his own countertops?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Like
No. He just didn't want. He just
don't.
wanted.
Just
The answer is just don't.
Yeah, don't. Yes.
No, it was not the case. He just didn't know how. He was trying to figure out materials and get an idea in his mind of, so he didn't waste anybody's time with budget and stuff like that. That's really where he was coming from. He's like, I don't know how to know, am I right? Because he was, the way he was doing it was the way you would logically think about it, which might not be the way you actually do it. And that's probably where I went, because when you're talking about, and we'll talk about a bunch of different things to measure, but countertops, pretty straightforward, I would think, if you wanted to get an idea of how much
material.
Yeah. You can get an idea, is what I'm saying.
Depth and length.
It's pretty straightforward, right? It's not like corner to corner, or it's just, but so when you go into a corner, this was this specific question. You go into a corner, do you measure along the back or along the front to get your depth, or do you just go wall to?
If you're just measuring just to get a general idea, it doesn't matter. Because whoever's doing your countertops is going to measure it
in a certain way, right?
You do not need to measure it up precisely and lay it out for them.
Right.
Just a basic idea if you want to have that basic idea.
Right. That's just depth and length of the space, and
you could do it from the middle. It doesn't matter.
That'll give you an idea. Okay. Because I thought that was a legitimate, because somebody who's looking at redoing their countertop, they just kind of want to get an idea of what.
Yeah.
Cabinets would be the same way then. You just length and width. You're not, because a cabinet person's going to measure them too, because they're the one putting it in. But
well, I guess with a countertop though, like, because you're going to want to give some sort of square footage, but you also need to know like specific runs, because if you're doing a solid surface, it's going to go together. If it's a certain length, it might have to be pieced together, so then it has to be matched. So those things are probably important to know, like your overall length, where the sink lands, center of the sink, island, size of that if you have an island, if it's turning a corner, things like that.
Right. Just off the top of my head, though, there are different thicknesses of countertop surfaces, right?
Yes.
Well, there's a common thickness, though, right? Like
Yeah.
inch and what is it? 2 inches, inch and a half?
No, like inch and an eighth. I think
Inch and an
that's,
eighth.
what, 2 centimeters? 3 centimeters?
3 centimeters.
3 centimeters. 2 centimeters is like 3/4 roughly.
Yeah, that's a marble typically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you can get thicker. You didn't want to go thinner than that.
No.
No, you won't go thinner than that. You can, and typically when you go thicker, it's laminated.
Oh. So, but typically if it's marble, not marble, but, stone of some form, whether it's, whatever the material, it's about 3 centimeters or 3/4 inch.
3 centimeters, which is like inch and an eighth.
Inch and an eighth, sorry. See, I'm not
Inch
doing
and
the
an eighth,
math.
inch and a quarter.
Right, about. And that's standard. There's no need to measure that.
Right.
And then what's the overhang on a cabinet then?
Well, that varies depending on what your cabinet style is, your door style.
Mm.
It's what, like 1/2 inch, 3/4 over past the drawers.
Yeah,
Something
in that variable.
Because when you're trying to get an idea of what it'll look like, I think these are things that you probably want to know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't measure your countertop to the top of the cabinet because it's going to overhang a little bit. That amount. That's just to get an idea.
Yeah, I mean, usually your cabinet's basic depth of a cabinet's 24 inches, and usually depth of your countertop is 25 to 25 and a half.
Right. I see. Are you now winding your watch on your wrist?
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna burn calories.
Yeah.
Your watch is gonna think you're walking. Oh wait, it's not that kind of watch.
What?
It's a regular watch.
It's a regular watch.
It's not a digital watch.
I don't have a digital watch. This
No.
is a watch. That's not a watch.
What is this? This is a
Computer.
A
Yeah.
computer on your wrist.
some would say
Is it measuring your heart rate right now?
it's very low. Very relaxed around my friends here.
Yeah.
Feel very safe.
It's kind of set off an alert.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
start beeping
Yeah.
any second now. But the idea here is that on a countertop is pretty straightforward because it's a cube. Not everything that you measure is like that.
That's true.
Right? I mean, there are some things like you're measuring it in a way that doesn't seem logical. It does when you understand the project, but like from the outside coming in, it's not right. And we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to ask you though, do you measure tile? Like if I'm changing gears real quick, but you should be able to answer this fast.
Huh.
If you were putting down a tile floor, it's still length and width. How do you account for the size of the tile?
You don't.
You don't. You just measure the space.
Square footage.
Yep.
Right.
And then based off the pattern or the type of tile you always add a percentage for scrap.
Right.
But that really is dependent on how it's laid and what it. Yeah.
Do you account for scrap differently based on different tile?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
does the bigger the tile mean more scrap or the smaller? How do you figure?
Not necessarily. Actually, mosaic tiles, like the smaller tiles, sometimes you have to account differently just because of how it will lay out in the space. The other thing that you have to take into account is the direction that the tiles run. So if you're running it on a diagonal, that's typically going to take more scrap because you're cutting corners out of tile and it isn't usable. It oftentimes isn't usable other places.
Right. So that's interesting to know because the run has some to do, right? How it's put down has something to do with scrap. And honestly, if you're a DIYer, that's it gets expensive. That scrap is where it gets
Well, if
expensive.
you're a DIYer and you're laying something in a herringbone or on a diagonal, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
no kidding.
I mean, I think I know people that probably could do it. They're mostly engineer type people
Yeah.
who just and it might take them forever.
Yeah.
But they probably could accomplish it because they're just,
Wired that way.
yeah, kind of just like just like that. But a guy like me, man, herringbone, there'd be a new name for it. It wouldn't be like, geez, what's that pattern? I'm like, no, I'm still working on a name. We're still just penciling in a name. Yeah, I've learned the hard way that, now the snap-in floors, the some of those, they're kind of like not that hard. They're just more of a pain to do. But with tile, though, I had a specific question about like, well, if I'm laying tile, do I have to measure differently? Like, do I have to account for the size?
Mm-mm.
The answer is no. You account for scrap.
Yeah.
Or whoever you're hiring is doing that.
Yeah.
You hope.
You hope.
You hope.
Well, that's the part, though, right? That's the part a professional starts to pay for his or herself because of efficiency that the DIYer doesn't generally bring to the table. When we come back, though, let's get a little bit more confusing with measuring. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We are brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with a showroom now open in Granger next to C. Kramer Interiors, and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We're talking about measuring. Turns out some things measure exactly how you think they would measure, like a countertop, depth, width, for your purposes to know what kind of space you have. That's pretty simple. And account for the overhang. They don't go right up to the cabinets. Hang over the cabinet. But your professional is going to do it in a different way to be more precise. But you can get an idea, just length and width. Not everything is like that, though.
Not everything.
Not everything. A TV, remember TVs are like, now they're pretty linear. Back in the day, you try to buy a TV, it's like, this was a, Chris, what was the biggest TV that you knew when you were growing up?
Oh my gosh.
It was tiny, right? It was like a 30-inch. It's like, man, you got a 30-inch TV?
I'm trying to remember. They weren't large.
No. Or the console TV.
Yeah, the console
but still the TV in the center of the console was not very big.
No.
It made it look smaller.
Well, because you had the stereo in with your,
Yeah, right. The turntable was on
was on the one side.
We're going to get to furniture in a minute. We should put a pin
sliding
in
doors to hide the TV,
Yes.
and you can close off the turntable, so
Right.
it looks like a console table versus
Right.
a TV.
You could put your martini on it.
It was always ours was French style.
Oh. See
That's
that?
what got him into
That's right.
design.
It was his
No, it's
gateway to design.
Yeah.
Was his console.
That was our
television.
first color TV.
Yeah, I see. Now look, I've only known color TVs. I haven't, but
Nope,
I know
started out in black and white when I was a kid. Didn't have color until later.
And then it was really not every show was in color. So you had color
Only the good
television,
ones.
but not
Only
but
the
still-
good ones.
only the good ones. Right.
Well, it's really funny to watch reruns of like Bewitched, and they started out black and white
And then they moved.
went to color.
Right. The fun fact, Wizard of Oz, Technicolor happened in the middle of the
Yep.
filming, and they
Yep.
just left it in there as an effect in the movie.
Yep. It was a new technology.
Yeah, Technicolor was called.
That's
neat.
pretty cool.
Joel's just sitting back.
He goes,
Going
Wizard
on.
of what?
Yeah, he's
No,
like,
it's legitimately one of my least favorite movies ever.
yeah, if you want to scare the crap out of your kids,
Yeah,
you should let
like,
them watch that.
I remember
You
seeing it.
really
as a
want to
kid.
cheer
I'm
the
like,
kids up, watch Dumbo. No, didn't.
I haven't seen-
those two are two of my least favorite movies ever.
I don't remember. I mean,
You no need to watch it, Chris. It'll
it's been millennium since
The
I've
dream-
seen.
The
because
dream
Dumbo.
scene and Dumbo freaked me out as
Yeah.
a kid.
There's a dream scene. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I've
Yeah.
seen it, but I do not remember. That's how long ago it's.
no need. Not that it's not a great
The mother
movie,
die or
Mr. and
something?
Mrs. Disney. It's fine. We're not bad mouthing Dumbo. We're just saying it's sad.
Did the mother
Very-
die?
Spoiler alert. No, it's a 100-year-old movie. Yeah. And then they imprison an elephant, and he has to fly to be free. It's really.
Oh.
It's
And
not.
he's just, and
Yeah.
he's kind of a jerk too.
Well, but
They
hey,
have to be if they're in prison. You have to eat.
if you're in the joint,
Hardens you.
yeah, it hardens you up, man.
It's a mouse as a friend too, doesn't he?
See, for a guy who
Coming
doesn't know
back.
anything about the
Coming
movie,
back.
That's all I remember.
Well-
Can't tell you anything else.
if you don't want your story about what you're trying to do to turn into Dumbo, learn how to measure. How do you like how I brought that back?
I had to measure his cage.
10 by 10 like everybody else. He's eating hay through the bars. At any rate,
Wow.
But what I was saying is not everything is so logical. I don't even know how we got on TV.
I don't either.
Yeah, because TVs used to be measured diagonally.
Yes, they still are.
They still are. They are?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That's a good question.
I don't know why.
And they're all, because every TV size is different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how they measure it?
The size
So
of
like a
it
70-inch could be different.
from
another
manufacturer to
7-inch.
manufacturer.
From another set.
Yeah.
It could take up more space.
Correct. So
I guess we're talking
sometimes
about
we have
furniture
to look it up online to see what the TV is and the size and to get the actual
dimensions.
box
But the
dimension.
exterior dimensions,
Correct.
Yeah.
not the
Correct.
screen. 'Cause
Not
they
the
all want to
screen.
talk about the screen.
Yep. But but if you go on their web, go online, you can get the actual dimension. Of
Why is that important, though?
Why is it important?
Yeah.
It's important because if you're mounting it to a wall and you want to put a piece of furniture underneath it, like a console or something, you want to make sure that it's proportional.
How do you mean? So I'm not being sarcastic at all. Really, why is there what dimension? What do we? How should it be proportionate? Like, what should it be the same exact size
Nope.
as your TV?
No, the console should be larger than your television,
The console should be larger.
not smaller.
You don't want the
'Cause
like.
that'll throw off the visual balance.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yep.
Everybody should go home and look at what's under your TV
Like if you have
and feel shame.
let's just say if you have a 60-inch wide TV and a 40-inch cabinet underneath it,
That's going to look silly.
it's going to look
Look silly,
silly.
right?
And if you have a 60-inch TV and I'm talking the box size, not the diagonal.
Oops.
But-
Better talk on the can.
And if
on
you have
the
another
mic.
console that's 60 inches, that's not right either, because that's not visually balanced.
So how do you deal with these gigantor TVs now, like 95-inch TV? What size?
Sometimes you don't put anything underneath it typically.
Under that size
Yeah.
TV? Because a 95-inch TV is 100 something.
Yeah, you don't necessarily. That is almost you're just mounting it to the wall, and that becomes a piece all unto itself.
Aren't they all mounted to the wall?
No, some of them sit on top of a console.
Old school. Is that's not
Well,
very.
it's because if you buy it and then you don't have a way to run wiring through your walls and
Oh, how do you hide the wire then?
bury it in the wall,
If you can't, then what?
then you don't. Then it's why it sits on a console.
You heard it. I'm just
Yep.
saying. So I'm telling you, people are going to go home and look at their TV and they're going to see wires hanging from the
And
bottom.
a lot of
and they're
people
gonna be
want to put them over the fireplace where they wasn't pre-wired for it, so they've got the wires hanging off
Yeah.
behind the TV onto the fireplace and down the side or whatever.
like- and you should really put it. It seems like a super hassle to run wire through a wall,
It is.
though. Like,
Especially over a fireplace.
Oh yeah,
Like-
yeah.
Good luck.
I am
Have fun.
married to somebody who will not put a TV over a fireplace ever.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris likes Lisa even more now.
No, I don't think it's always appropriate.
Absolutely not.
I agree. Sometimes you're right.
Takes away from the fireplace.
It's not also a very nice sitting position to
No, you're looking up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if you have nothing but like cafe tables? Then you're fine.
Like high tops.
Are they going to make like a cafe couch?
if
You
you
have
get
to
a
climb up on a ladder.
called a lift chair.
I'm on my way.
Alec Home Medical. Maybe we can get him as a sponsor now.
Yeah. So, but we weren't going to talk about furniture this time. But so how do you? We may as well because
Yeah.
we're talking about
Yeah.
it. So you have a TV. You're measuring the exterior of the TV for design purposes. For watching purposes, you're measuring the screen.
There's certain heights too that you want to mount the television, which I cannot tell you off the top.
No,
of my head
yeah.
what it is because I have to look it up.
We need to get an AV guy and gal in here to talk about that because that's super important.
There is a formula that they use to get to the right height based on the TV size,
So you're not
And
craning
where
your
your
neck to look up.
where your seating is.
where your seating is.
So
Yep.
All those measurements are not, once you learn them, they're pretty intuitive, but they are when you have the TV and your furniture is far enough away and the TV's the right size and all that stuff works out, it is a pretty good experience.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
It is. It really does work. So you have a TV that's 60 inches. You're going to have a
72-inch console.
72. That's an awful specific number.
Well, it's because you buy them in increments. I mean, it's
Could you have a 76?
Yeah.
It just has to be bigger.
It just has to be bigger. It could be 84.
Gotcha. So there. So how do you measure? We were talking about this off air, and we might run out of time in this segment, but we'll carry it over. How do you measure a couch?
Or for a couch.
Or for a couch? How about
What do you have to
that?
take into account?
How do you measure for a
Well, there's two questions there. 'Cause
Okay.
A lot of people don't know how to measure a
Hmm.
couch or a sofa.
Okay. Before we let that cat out of the bag, because that's going to have to go into the next segment, why do you even have to measure?
Oh my gosh, you want to make sure it fits. I mean, that sounds like a pat answer, but no, seriously, you have to make sure it's going to fit your room, your wall space, wherever you want to put it. Your backside.
Your fanny.
Honestly, your backside, you want to measure, gosh.
So you want to
So are we talking about how to measure a sofa or how to measure a room for a sofa?
both? There's two questions there, Chris.
Yeah.
But they're both.
So we're not talking about measuring it to get it into the room. I'm talking, you know what I mean? Like, I guess you have to do that too.
So let's tackle the first question. How do you measure a sofa? You measure a sofa from furniture is measured from the farthest points out. So a sofa, if you want to get the length of a sofa, you measure it from outside arm to outside arm. So when you're looking at, the sofa says it's, 88 by 40. Well, the 40 depth is from the very back of the sofa to the very front of the sofa. Does not give you your inside dimension.
Does it include cushions?
No.
No, it's just the frame.
That's just the frame size.
When we go back, we open the can of worms here,
Yeah.
Joel. We did this. When we come back, we'll go to the rest. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger next to C. Kramer Interiors. And Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We're talking about measuring. It's in the name. Joel mentioned that off air. It's like, well, it's in the name. Measure twice. We're talking about it, though, the less intuitive, like the things that might be a little bit more complex. Started with countertops. That's pretty straightforward for the homeowner if you're trying to get an idea. From there, though, it can get a little bit more complicated. We're talking about measuring a couch, where Chris pointed out there's so much that goes into that, because you're not just measuring the couch, you have to measure the space. So recap how to measure the couch for us, Chris. Like if you're getting a couch and you're looking at dimensions, like you're thumbing through maybe ordering a couch or something with somebody, how do you measure? You said you're measuring the frame from
outside arm to outside arm, back to front, back of the sofa to the front of the sofa.
Not including cushions.
Not including cushions.
Because they can overhang.
That's just your overall dimension. That's not your interior seat dimension. That's not your back height. That's not the seat height. Those are all things that
You have to take that into consideration too, right?
for comfort.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're my height, the depth matters.
Right. And that's why it's important to sit in something before you order it, because you want to know how deep it is. And
so you should buy a couch, though, just on the side. You should buy a couch based on your use, not your guest's use.
oh yeah, I mean, you want to buy it you're buying it for you. Some people do also consider, I have an elderly parent that this might be difficult to get in and out of, so I hear that every once in a while, but
Right.
You're primarily buying it for you and for comfort level.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the space? Like, how do you figure out if it fits in the space?
Well,
Dimensionally, I suppose.
how do you determine that?
Yeah. Because you don't have test couches to carry in.
No.
You have to, I imagine you're pretty much an expert.
Yeah, I'm
if you didn't.
assuming that there's quite a few variables with that,
Yeah.
like where it's going to go and how that coordinates with things in the room. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, have you ever walked into a room and said, that couch is too big or
Yeah.
that couch
Yeah.
is too small?
Yeah, it's not going to fit.
Have you ever seen too small?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just did that last week. No, seriously.
Yeah.
We're moving things around, and the suggestion was to move a Chesterfield sofa down into a lower level.
Right.
And Chesterfields are very short. They only have a 30-inch high back. And I knew before they even moved it down that it was not going to work. I even said, since this is not going to work. But they had to see it themselves.
Right.
So
And what was the problem though? Like
it was too short, and it was behind. It was sitting in. There's a bar, which is 42 inches high,
Mhm.
and then the sofa was kind of in front of it. There's a walkway in between, but the proportions were,
it just looked weird.
oh my gosh, it made the bar look ginormous and the sofa look
Tiny,
minuscule.
right.
So we had to, like, nope, out it went.
Right.
So
But you have to think about those things. Some are trial and error. Some come with experience. Like your experience told you, like, man, that's probably not going to work.
and I can visualize it before they even did it. But
Right. But you're taking into account all of these things when you're bringing in a large piece of furniture like a couch.
mm,
You're taking that in. Where do you measure from? I could see, I don't want to speak for Joel, but I could feel in his mind, he's like, well, how do you, what is your point of pivot? Like, what is your,
you measure the room. You have to measure. I mean, you measure the space,
the whole
itself,
space.
the whole space, not just a wall. Well, you can measure just a wall,
and then what?
and then we have to kind of lay it out to see what size will fit comfortably.
How do you feel about couches in front of windows?
Sometimes you don't have a choice.
But you can't have sometimes the couch will cover the window.
Sometimes, not all the time, but it's just that's why we have to measure to see. Okay, the room lays out better this way with the sofa against the wall. Your typical rule of thumb is largest piece on the largest wall. So if you have a large
Well, that's
wall,
good to know, right
That's a
there.
rule
I
of
mean,
thumb.
like,
There you go.
it's a general rule.
So you're looking at like this piece of furniture that's definitely going to be a major part of a room.
Mm-hmm.
I think where I'm going is like back when I grew up, I had a living room that was 25 by 20 or whatever it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that
That's a
was
big room.
that room's whole job. And now with big rooms with kitchens that are over here, I think that's in my mind.
Things
That's why I can't. I'm trying to wrap my mind around that.
yeah. How do you lay that out?
Yeah. From where? Like, where do you figure out where the kitchen theoretically stops and the that's
You
what
kind of zone them. I mean, like if you've got an open concept, you've got the kitchen, dining room, living room.
Would you go from the TV back then?
No.
No.
No. It's okay. It's kind of hard to describe it
See, we're getting in the mind of the artist here,
Yep.
Joel.
because, okay, let's say you've got a wall, your fire, then the space kind of defines itself by hallways, walkways, things of that nature. So you kind of work within the perimeter of, okay, the wall ends here and this now becomes a hallway. So I don't want the sofa to be too far out or too far back because then it'll be in the hallway. I want to keep it within the perimeter of what would be defined as the room itself.
And you measure from that point. That's technically then where the room
So then you got to kind of
starts.
figure out, okay, so this is a walkway, so that means that the room technically ends here, even though it's an open concept.
Because there's a hallway, so to speak.
Right. You don't want
or
to
a
block it. You don't want to come in too far because then it'll be visually off. People
Right.
feel like they have to walk around it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you're like, if you encroach if you can like look down and you're encroaching on the doorway that the hallway goes to, you're probably, the couch is probably too
Too far
out.
back
Yeah.
because it again, the mind, the eye, and the brain perceive balance. Sometimes we know something's off, but we don't know why it's off.
Right. You just get a weird,
You just got to,
Feeling.
it never feels right
right.
until you kind of, I pushed this back 6 inches. Now this makes sense. So, but the thing that sometimes we have people come in with their room measurements and they'll just measure the length and the width. But that's not enough to go off of because you need to know where the windows are, how much wall space do I have between this corner and this window, and how wide are the windows, and where is that door exactly? Because where does that door, what does it flow off of? What's the traffic flow? So you have to keep all of those things.
Do you take into consideration like where like the registers are too?
That's a lot of times you forget that, but it's an important detail for this, because you don't want to block registers with furniture.
Right.
Which is really difficult to do.
And sometimes they're not where you think
Where they
they're
should
supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We run into that all the time.
I was in a
I
house
mean, we're having one moved right now because it's like almost directly under the cold air return.
well, that's interesting.
Why would you do that? Somebody didn't measure.
No.
Like
So,
your
wait, Joel-
heat's coming out and going straight
Okay.
back. Like,
That's
what are you doing?
I was
Or
wondering.
you're-
I was hoping
yeah.
you would explain that, because why that's a bad thing is because you're just
It's not getting to the
Well,
rest
you're,
of the room.
you're
So
supposed
ignorant.
to put them underneath
Windows
underneath the
or-
windows.
Yeah.
And I was just in a house where they put them on the side, which,
Maybe they did that so that you could put furniture there.
but it doesn't work because the nightstands are on the register
Oh, nice. Yeah.
because
There you
it's
go.
on the side. So you're like, "Ugh."
right. That's why we're having this talk, because this is people need to think ahead. You know, like
Well-
when the people out there, the people that depend on us,
sometimes.
Yeah.
we want them
Yeah.
to have this consideration.
But
The
as,
real ones.
as
Yeah.
designers, we tend to be a little, what do I want to say,
Mm.
OCD.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, we could say all kinds
Yeah,
of
we-
things about designers.
So when you put when you have that register on the side and you try to line the nightstands up in the window so they're centered in the window, which they should be, and you can't because you've got to keep the leg off the register.
Yeah.
Oh, that drives me crazy. Then your lamp is there and it's like offset in the window.
He wants all his lamps in the center of the windows, is what he's saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
it should have been lined up with it should have been centered, because when you have the mullions in the windows,
Uh-huh.
and you've got your, it just bugs me.
What?
And a sofa not centered with the fireplace, kind of.
he will throat chop you.
Yeah, he will.
He will throat
Yeah.
chop.
Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Don't give him hot
Sometimes-
tea, because he's going to
sometimes
pour it on you.
You just
Yeah.
don't have a choice.
Oh, did I spill the red wine again? Maybe we should move the couch where it won't hit the wine. But these are things that aren't obvious to everybody.
No, they're not.
I've the fireplace, like you say this all the time. There's focal points, and then there's things that you have to account for.
Mhm.
And what the point of this show is, like, find them and measure from them, so you're not using that space. Like, you're just not even using it.
Yeah, like if you're measuring a room, you go from the corner wall to the window is one dimension. Then the width of the window is another dimension. And then the wall space between
There's another dimension.
is another dimension from the window to the next corner or to the next window. All those increments are important.
And that's how you measure a room, folks. That's why we did
I've
this.
gotten to watch that magic.
You
It's pretty
firsthand.
special.
When we come back, we're going to get to the most complicated of all measurements. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We are brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger, right next to C. Kramer Interiors and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on
Yes.
hardwood floors.
Highly valued.
Highly trusted and valued.
Mm-hmm.
You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. And it's not lost on me that both of our sponsors require measuring.
Oh, yeah.
They're very, very...
Detailed.
Yeah, everything we talk about on the show has some form of measurement in the background. I would venture to say.
Yep.
Even artistic taste has to be measured so it fits someplace, whatever you buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Mona Lisa. I've never seen it in person. Have you seen it in person, Chris?
I have.
I hear it's not very big.
It isn't.
In my mind, I used to think it was like 30 by 30.
Yeah.
No, it's small. It's like that.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's very small.
So, but it's awful big, and, it's,
In our hearts.
yes. in there. So, Chris, you were saying you're going to beat me with a complicated
I want to
measurement.
hear what yours
I'm
is.
sure you will.
What's yours?
Mine is windows.
Oh, no. That's pretty straightforward.
To me, I can't get them right.
Carpet.
Carpet.
Measure carpet.
Why is measuring carpet hard?
Why?
Yeah.
Because carpet comes in certain widths. Most of it's 12 foot wide. So
Most.
sometimes it's 15. So it's not, you use length and width, but
Then you have to figure out how it's going to go together.
correct.
And where it's going to go
Where
together.
the seam's going to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is pretty.
And so you have to figure all that. That is complicated.
Yes.
Yeah, it's two measurements overlapping on each other.
Yeah, because then you've got, okay, if I do this width, then I've got this waist. This is where it's got to be cut. Can I use that as the piece over here? And then,
And then it gets even more complicated if there's some sort of a pattern.
yes.
Oh, man.
So it's not, I don't measure carpet for that reason.
Same.
Because that sounds like
Well,
Tetris.
I got
it sounds like Tetris.
So that is very complicated. The other thing that's complicated is measuring for your HVAC.
I've never had to do that. So is that for your runs?
It's for the size of your
Oh, the unit.
unit that you need for based off of square footage, and yeah, I mean, there's so many things that go into that, and if it's not done right, either if it's too big, it becomes inefficient. If it's too small, you have hot spots or cold spots.
It's
whatever.
even more inefficient.
Yeah, there's just like that is a complicated measurement, and it's not, and there is measurement that goes into it, but there's this calculation that you have to take into a consideration that doesn't just include square footage or whatever, and so it's interesting.
Yeah, you're measuring like open space,
Yeah,
like science stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. And getting back to the carpet, we said this before. Blending carpet is an art form, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
You want somebody that definitely knows what they're doing, because you have to, if you're putting down carpet and you run the naps different.
Yeah, exactly.
that's what I was going to ask. Is there a direction that even
Yes.
Yes.
even a non-pattern
Yes.
carpet needs to have?
Yeah, there's a certain nap to it, which is the directional of the way the yarns are woven.
Right. You don't want it to look like your lawn when you're like,
Yes.
Striped.
yeah,
Yeah.
striped.
Yep.
I mean, unless you do.
No.
No. I've seen carpet squares,
Yeah.
but that's not like a home
That's a
use. is it?
commercial
That's like a commercial use, right? Like carpet tile or whatever.
Yep.
Not necessarily doing that. But yeah, carpeting, wow. And a pattern, I can't even imagine. Same with upholstery. You've talked about that before. Measuring upholstery is probably pretty technical too.
Not too bad. It's not like I have to have the upholsterer go over and take a look. I can, it's this size chair. I look it up in a manufacturer's price list, and this is what they recommend for yardage. So that's kind of what I go off of.
It's already been done. You mean like kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's
A lot
already
of
kind of
it's been figured
formulated
out.
for you, and then if it has a pattern repeat, then you have to account for that.
Right.
I see. Yeah. But Windows to me, now you guys like do, I think it's because you guys do it every day. Try to,
Well, so it depends on the windows, though.
See?
Like there are complications. If you're doing replacement windows,
which
so
means
you're
what?
you're leaving the frame in, and you're taking out the sashes, putting in another window that's framed but fits inside. That can get a little complicated because if you're doing that with windows that from the 80s, that's something totally different than windows from 1954. And so there's these, and because it's got to fit in pretty tight, and it's got you because you want the maximum amount of window. And so that can get a little complicated. If you are replacing a window with a full window with the nailing flange and all that stuff, we do that actually quite a bit because a lot of times it's with a major remodel or a renovation where the exterior is getting redone. At least part of the interior is getting redone. So you're pulling a bunch of stuff apart anyway. So it's just, let's pop them out, pop new ones in. That's not as complicated because there's a basic width of the jamb on windows. Now that can vary a little bit, which can
See?
throw you off. And not everybody frames their rough openings the same, which is frustrating. Like there is a standard for how much room should be in between your rough framing and your window. Anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch on either side. 3/4 is a lot. But because, those holes aren't going to be perfectly square ever. So trying to get that right can be a little bit frustrating.
So if you're looking at your window, you have to know whether the whole thing's coming out or if you're doing a replacement.
Right.
First thing.
And then you're going to take into consideration the depth, because if there may be extension jambs on your windows, more than likely that's going to change.
What's an extension jam?
Yeah.
So your window goes into the hole only so far, so typically 2x6 walls. A window is not built with a frame that will cover 2x6. So it stops. You still have framing and drywall exposed. You have to cover that with an extension jamb. That's a box the same size as the window.
Huh.
So you have to take that into consideration then for if you're replacing these windows. I need to take into consideration what do I need for the extension jamb.
So you have to measure all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So generally when you measure a window, is it diagonal?
No. It's height and width.
Of what? That's what I'm asking. See?
Well, there again,
See?
if you are replacing the entire window, then it's as much of it's outside of the jambs.
What we're talking about here is measuring windows, right? And everybody's been in a box store everywhere and seen window after window after window. And they're not super complicated to put in, really, right? I mean, if the hole's there,
Level and square.
right. But the key is knowing the things that Joel was just talking about. Because it's not just one. What I'm saying is that when you're measuring a window, you're not just measuring the window.
Yeah.
There's like,
Well, you walk into a box store and you see these windows and you get the idea that, well, there's just these average sizes, which really isn't true. There's no such thing as a nominal size in windows. I mean, they make them, quote unquote, but I don't know that I've ever gotten nominal size windows. Everything's ordered to the size that it needs to be.
well, we're out of time. We can't cover any more measuring on Measure Twice.
Oh,
We've
we're done?
done it. We filled it up. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Measure Twice.
Podcasts by Federated Media.